Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe, we are nearing kind of the deepest part of the offseason. This time where the coaches, they have that rare little window to actually unwind, take some vacation. For ASU, the kind of recruiting activities are paused due to the NCAA stuff. But that still means that we have a lot to talk about. Fall camp's not too far away, just about a month and a half from the Sun Devils opening camp. And now with the roster set, it might be a good time to maybe take stock in how we're feeling about it.
Yeah, right now where we are kind of feels like the calm before the storm of this, not just because it was a little windy outside, maybe some monsoons kicking up when I drove here to our awesome studio to do this episode. Yeah, we kind of feel like obviously, spring football is in the rear view, the transfer portal's closed, so just all that hard hitting and nonstop news that we talked about for months and months and months of time, that is quieted down at least a little bit by comparison. And like you mentioned, we're not terribly far away from fall camp kicking up. The dates aren't yet released, but usually that's going to be late July, early August. So for this next month or so, got a little time to kill. No better way to kill that time than basically, more or less, breaking down this roster, these position groups, and how we see things shaking out as the Devils enter this 2024 season.
With 84 players on the roster. Now, of course, they're down a scholarship due to the NCAA findings. ASU's roster is set, and so we are going to take a ranking. See, we have Joe has his list, I have my list. We're going to see how it stacks up in terms of how confident we feel. Now, not necessarily like a talent ranking, but just how confident we feel with this group heading into fall camp. But before we dive into all that, a couple of news items to pass along. Starting off with some recruiting news since we last joined you. This is a guy you'll hear from at the end of the episode. ASU did pick up another wide receiver commit, Uriah Neloms, a local guy from Santan Charter, a two-way school where he put up some monster numbers, Joe. It's kind of a whirlwind week. You'll hear him talk about it. He participated in a 7-on-7 tournament on ASU's campus, took an unofficial visit a couple days later after performing well and catching some coaches' eyes, and then a few days after that, made his commitment. 6'4", 196-pounder, 3-star prospect per Rivals. So another very intriguing weapon, very good frame for Heinz Ward to work with.
Yeah, I mean, that size alone, that height alone, that's something that certainly will appeal to you, that can travel and that can be effective at the college level. Now, obviously, he's coming from, a smaller level, play at the high school rank, so you would anticipate that maybe this is kind of a developmental guy, but there's absolutely nothing at all wrong with that. So always great to make inroads as far as in-state recruiting goes, because as we'll break down here in a moment, not all of the news along those lines has been positive over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, that's a pickup again. That could be one of those diamond in the rough capable players. I know that ASU is really priding itself on kind of getting in with some of these recruits before they blow up. You've seen that narrative in a lot of interviews or assessments and things like that, and this could be another example of that.
All right, so as you mentioned, Joe, not all local recruiting news has been great. ASU got a decommitment from former Scottsdale Saguaro DB Dejon Hinton, and maybe a little twist of the knife, he committed to the school down south. Now, it should be mentioned, he is a Wildcat legacy, so the family ties to Arizona are there. But I think if there's one area where ASU could absorb a decommitment there, and especially when you look at the current roster status, the secondary is it's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah, position-wise, if we just kind of take it in a vacuum and say, all right, does this player at this position, does the departure from the commit list really impact you in a significant way? That is obviously a position group where you can afford to have that sort of loss. Now then, of course, it stings a lot for it to be an in-state loss, and then it stings one heck of a lot given the destination he went to. I mean, his father played there, so that's something that is not a big shocker as far as that landing spot. There have been a few things that have been discussed in the message boards and what have you about NIL policies and that sort of thing, and a lot of policies as it pertains to ASU commits and recruits visiting Arizona. But yeah, so he will be attending elsewhere. I know that some folks are getting some feathers ruffled about the fact that this is not the first in-state commit that ASU has gotten and lost for this cycle, and obviously this coaching staff has a ton of Arizona ties. Jason Mons and many others, obviously Kenny Dillingham as well. So that was a focal point that that was expected to be a strong suit of this staff, and certainly not saying it's not the case, but just when you have those two in-state commits that were both of a high pedigree and you lose them both, at least as of now, because anything can happen from now until signing day, it does leave a little bad taste in the mouth of Sun Devil fans.
Yeah, so we'll see how this class continues to finish out. Early signing period is in December, but yeah, as mentioned, that it's never great to lose a talented local player, but it is something that ASU, perhaps numbers wise, could fit, and we'll see how things transpire in the years to come. If Hinton's able to follow in his father's legacy, and those rivalry games should maybe just have a little extra incentive there for the Devils. One piece of news that came down today, not necessarily ASU specific, but across the entire sport. Now, this, of course, the 2-minute warnings coming to college football. The helmet to helmet or the sideline to helmet communications for the quarterbacks and middle linebackers is coming to college football. And today, the NCAA approved something that I would probably say has already been happening, but they have now passed unlimited coaching staff sizes for the upcoming 2024 season. And so now analysts and quality control staff can provide technical and tactical instruction to athletes during practices and games. They did note that the number of folks who can do off-campus recruiting still remains at 11, which has been typically the size of the head coach and his 10 assistants. So we'll see exactly how this happened, how it plays out at Arizona State. In terms of they have some very quality guys in terms of on that staff as well. We saw you guys like Stephen Miller as grad assistant kind of work their way up, and also on the recruiting staff as well. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how this happens. Perhaps maybe at that Big Ten SEC level. I mean, Alabama has already been noted for in the last few years under Saban of just having a slew of former head coaches and analyst roles.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, Nick Saban's got to be maybe chomping at the bit to get back in the game with this unlimited thing. He can get, as many of these former head coaches as he possibly wants to, and get him through that, Nick Saban rehabilitation program that he's put a lot of folks under. One player of note, recruiting wise, we don't want to miss out on mentioning Demarius Robinson, the running back that ASU got about a week ago. I don't believe we discussed this in our last episode. Solid running back, chose ASU over the likes. Mainly over Houston and some others, Big 12 foes that ASU got a recruiting victory over. So a good skill player there for the Devils to get. And we'll see how many coaches are on the staff to coach him when he's here, since it's unlimited.
It is unlimited. And, of course, Sean Aguano has done a great job developing backs. And Robinson's a guy who's got some great playmaking ability. I believe he'll average over 10 yards per carry a season ago in prep ball in Oklahoma. And speaking of ASU running backs, before we dive into our positional confidence rankings, a really cool event depending on when you're listening to this, but Sunday, June 30th, ASU running back and Chandler native DeCarlos Brooks is holding his second annual free haircuts for kids at the Arizona Barber Academy, 1425 West Southern Avenue, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, DeCarlos is one of the stand-up dudes on this roster. He did this last year. And if you catch the sit-down series episode, DeCarlos kind of takes us through the journey that he has getting into haircutting, but he decided to put his skills to good use for the community last year. Big hit, and now a really cool thing that's happening yet again. And, Joe, we might have a little bit of a presence at this event on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, first and foremost, going to be a great event. Incredible of DeCarlos Brooks to do this thing as he did in the past as well. Just an awesome way to get involved in the community. Brad, like you mentioned, we'll be out there. We'll be checking it out as we talked about last week. Our guy, Ben Coleman, that we're going to be partnering up with through the course of this football season for some inside type of view of how things go in the life of a major college football player. He's going to be out there, obviously close with DeCarlos Brooks. They both played at Cal together, transferred to ASU. Ben's going to be out there. So we're going to get a little inside look at this event through the eyes of that Sun Devil offensive lineman. So folks, you'll love what you'll see, but by all means, check out the event this weekend if you can.
All right, Joe, let's dive into our positional confidence rankings now that the ASU's roster is locked and set at 84 scholarship guys, plus, of course, walk-ons. Now, again, this isn't a talent rank, and this isn't, saying this group is necessarily better than that group. It is just merely how we feel. It's vibes based. How we're feeling confidence wise, ranking the 12 position groups, and As we know, we've split the offensive and defensive lines into the interior and the tackles and edge spots as well. Put all special teams together. Nickelback is, since they are considered safeties within ASU's defensive scheme, they'll be lumped in with the safeties. So that's how we got to 12. Joe, start us off. What's your number 12 position group?
So the least confident for me, I'm starting with offensive tackle because of the fact that it's an area where there is need. Obviously, we know last year there were difficulties. Of course, there were injuries. They made some player acquisitions, but quite frankly, nothing that leaps off the page in that regard. And we just know how integral those positions are. To keep the quarterback upright, for the offense to operate in any capacity is massive as far as the impact that an offensive tackle can have on that. And when you're dealing with quarterbacks at ASU that are either unproven or have some questions about them, you need the offensive line to be strong. So yeah, the confidence right now in offensive tackle, something left to be seen, that's for sure.
My number 12 is special teams, because we're seeing a complete rebuild of that group from a season ago. Granted, when you're most effective special team performer, arguably Cam Scadaboo with the pooch punts. I mean, he outperformed obviously Josh Carlson, last year's punter. Dealing with a broken foot, some issues with consistency on field goals. So I think overall, when you're looking at, you're going to have a new kicker, a new punter, new long snapper. I think ASU needs to put is going to be perhaps putting a lot of their faith in two guys who weren't here in the spring that are coming in that have come in over the summer. Parker Lewis, the former USC and Ohio State kicker, is also able to punt as well. Canyon Floyd, one of the best prep punters in the state of Arizona, I believe in the country as well. In the spring, we saw a kicker battle between Carson Kiefer and Ian Hershey. Both were okay. I mean, nobody really kind of stood out and really captured that job and made a claim to it. So I think that's going to be a battle. So ASU is going to be playing some tough teams, probably a lot of close games. So the ASU should have a pretty good defense. Special teams are going to make a difference, and this is a complete rebuild. Now, granted, last year's special teams collectively weren't great, so perhaps a fresh start is nice, but I think Charlie Ragel's got a lot of work to do on the special teams front. So I'm feeling a little uneasy right now with the special teams unit.
So number 11 for me, that's the big one. That's quarterback. I mean, if you look at the scholarship players that are on the roster for ASU, with the players that were brought in, you figure that this coaching staff might be looking for an alternative to Trenton Bourguet, because obviously the narrative was what it was during the spring about Sam Levitt. You bring in Sims, who has starting experience, so there's going to be a lot of competition there. Granted, Sam Levitt only attempted 23 passes last year at Michigan State. Sims, we know the issues about the turnovers. Now, there have been some descriptions and some maybe qualifiers about the turnovers and some evaluations that have been given. He did do some solid things at Georgia Tech. But all in all, I mean, obviously the position is the most important on the field and is going to be worth wins and losses for ASU. So when you just really don't know what you have between guys that simply have not been at Arizona State, some have not been starters, some have had consistency issues. It's just a major question mark. And again, similar to offensive tackle, of course, quarterback is such a hugely important position, and that's why the confidence in that position group is so much more important than maybe some others, because of the fact that you're touching the ball so much, you're in charge of the offense. If there are consistency issues, like we've talked about multiple times, this schedule coming up, you don't have any, massively the Oregons or the Washingtons of the world that are just, top 10 caliber programs. But you do have a consistent, steady streak of, challenging opponents. So the quarterback obviously is going to take you as far as you're going to go when it comes to this 2024 season.
I agree. Number 11, quarterback. I think Trenton Bourguet provides a good baseline, and but I do think that I agree with you, Joe, that this staff is looking to bring in some impact guys. Some playmaking. The offense struggled for a number of reasons. A season ago, we talked about that ad nauseum with injuries and whatnot, but they need better playmaking from the quarterback position. And obviously, Sam Levitt ended spring, kind of in that driver's seat. But they also then brought in a guy with a lot of starting experience at the FBS level in Jeff Sims, a very talented dual threat guy, but also one that has been very inconsistent with his play. You mentioned the turnovers and perhaps less than ideal circumstances at his prior two stops. So Kenny Dillingham, and Marcus Arroyo, with their track record of developing quarterbacks, kind of crack that Jeff Sims code? Are they going to be able to unlock the Sam Levitt potential, or is Trenton Bourguet, as he's done the last couple seasons, been in a position to kind of make or break the season and really kind of take those reins? And obviously, a lot goes into the success at the quarterback spot, but I just don't know. I think that Sam Levitt had a shaky kind of first 2 weeks as he was kind of getting his feet wet in spring, but really finished strong, and it gave me confidence. And that chemistry he built with Jordan Tyson over the last 3 was nice. But during these summer months, when you're kind of behind the scenes, and as the conditioning and strength programs going on, this is where we see guys like Taylor Kelly kind of make their move. So we'll see what, as coaches like to say often, that they don't pick the quarterback, the team picks the quarterback. So once camp opens up, we'll see exactly how the pecking order goes, but also how these guys rally around a specific signal caller, and hopefully there's a guy that's able to take the reins, make their mark in the Big 12. But right now, there's a lot of questions.
So my number 10, one that Brad's already mentioned, and that would be special teams. I agree, there are definitely question marks there. It's an important position group. I just feel like quarterback and offensive tackle are importanter. So you bring in Parker Lewis, who's a really interesting, case study. He had a solid start to his career at USC, and barely saw the field much at Ohio State. So you kind of throw your hands up and wonder what's to make of him. But again, he's a skilled performer, somebody that's got a lot of game experience, had, I believe, some caliber of all conference accolades when he was with the Trojans. So there's some history there as well. Kenyon Floyd, if he would be the punter, comes in with some high accolades, one of the top-rated kickers. They don't, Rivals doesn't do a ton when it comes to evaluating kickers and star rankings and stuff like that. They only really do a few each year, but he was among them. So he's really among the better incoming freshman punters in college football. So that's a big thing. Ian Hershey, he's still around, and he did some all right things last year in the time that he had. So, this is one of those deals, until you see improvement, you're going to be concerned about it, because like other position groups, you don't know what you have. You don't have that, that Zane Gonzalez that's climbing up through the ranks, or a Matt Hawk, or these ones that progress year over year. So it's kind of a fresh slate. But we did see last year, obviously, games were determined, wins and losses were determined by the special teams, and in far too many cases that ended up in a loss. So it's going to be an important one this year.
Number 10, offensive tackle. There's just simply no proven commodities. Talked to Coach Songa Tuatele earlier today. Said that there's 5 guys in that starting mix, and we'll see how things pan out in fall camp. But I think for each of those guys, there's some reasons for optimism, but also reasons for concern. Emmett Boley won the right tackle job a season ago, but is coming off a major injury. Now he looked more confident in that leg in spring, but still, live action reps. There's some. It's just different, and he's got a great frame for it. But we'll see. Bram Walden had some great success when he was thrust into the starting lineup at left tackle. He also has some versatility to play guard, but we'll see exactly what he's able to do. Can he stay healthy? Because he was not able to, and that's kind of one of the things there. He's a guy who gets dinged up a bit, but he has some talent. I believe he's coming out of high school as a nice 4-star prospect. Had a year at Oregon. Jalen Clem was kind of the 6th lineman for a team that made the college football playoff a season ago at Washington, and looked like he was still getting used to some time in the spring. Josh Atkins was a Hawaii starter at left tackle a season ago. Had some up and down moments, and of course, going up against ASU's defensive front, as we'll talk about them a little bit later on. That's a challenge for any offensive line. It's a very good defensive front, so perhaps spring performances maybe need to be graded in a certain way. But you have those 4 guys, and then Maxi Hanachor. Does he have the most upside of any of them? The talk is that he has made a huge leap. This is a guy who's not played a ton of American football. Coming over to the United States, and then being more of a basketball guy before playing some JUCO football, playing last year for the Devils, perhaps a little earlier than anybody thought. But he's got some tantalizing upside. But some reasons that maybe a couple of these guys find their groove, are able to lock down the tackle spots, and Tuatele has shown that he can develop an offensive line. But right now, there's just so many question marks for me that I got to keep him at number 10.
So we're through the first 3, and in different orders, we chose the same 3. So, a lot of these things were pretty, lockstep in tune. So we're kind of there, but a little variety. So that's good. You don't want every single thing to be identical. All right. So we're now Done with those. Into the single digits now. And my number 9 is going to be the first defensive entry of the list. I'm going with cornerback. You lose Ro Torrance, you lose D Ford, you have Ed Woods transfer. You get some inbound transfers that you're encouraged by, but ones that just some of them haven't seen a ton of the field. You've got some high-profile true freshmen that have a lot of potential, but once again, they're still true freshmen. So I think cornerback gets a little lost in the shuffle because there is quite a bit of excitement on defense, or at least some optimism, especially in the secondary elsewhere. But yeah, when you really have to replace so many key starters, key players, transfers that you may not really have expected to depart the program, that's going to be a bit of a workload. So the onus of responsibility, falls on the coaches and players to step it up there, because that's, an area you got some talented quarterbacks in the Big 12 for sure. And you got to be, ready to go toe for toe with those top wide receivers. And we'll see what comes. This is one where I'm not necessarily worried about it per se, like I am with some of the other positions that we already mentioned. But this is one that I'm kind of like, all right, we got to keep our eye on it, see how it develops.
Yeah, because that's interesting. Because those first three, I guess I could put on a tier of I'm nervous about. From here on out, the next few positions for me, I would say hopeful. I'm from what I saw in spring, I'm hopeful. And in my number 9 position, tight end. This is basically a brand new room for position group coach Jason Mons. Obviously, Jalen Conyers is now at Texas Tech. Bryce Pierre's at UCLA. Ryan Morgan stepping away from football. So this is almost a entirely brand new room, and brand new room entirely for scholarship players. But in talking to Jason Mons recently, he felt very confident of this group, and he feels that, especially with the top 3 guys, that they might end up playing, a lot together in some form of combination, maybe all 3 at the same time. Marqueston Douglas, the Florida State transfer, big dude, 270-pounder, but showed some soft hands and got more confident as spring ball progressed, and big frame there. Cameron Harpole coming over from San Diego State, I thought really kind of got stronger as he got more comfortable in the offensive scheme and kind of the what was asked of the tight end position. I think he's got some sneaky upside there. Shimon Mateer coming over from, I guess, technically Colorado. He had a cup of coffee there, but mainly he scored with the Cincinnati Bearcats in his career, 5 touchdowns a season ago. That could be a guy you watch out for as perhaps a breakout candidate in terms of what he can do in this offensive scheme. And then there's a couple of true freshmen that are in that mix as well. Excuse me. Jaden Fortier, the heralded recruit out of the Pacific Northwest. He seems like he might be able to get in and contribute, even though he's coming off an ACL injury suffered at the end of last football season. But so that could be an interesting component there, though you don't necessarily want to rely too heavily on him. And then a guy who came in as in the recruiting class as a defensive lineman, but is switching over to tight end. And Mons is pretty exuberant in his praise for James Giggy, a small school guy, Bradshaw Mountain here in the state of Arizona, but some really good athleticism and just kind of a numbers game. The path on the defensive line maybe a little bit more heavy, but this is a guy in Giggy that if he catches on and under the tutelage of Mons could be a contributor. But you're really looking at the 3 guys of Marqueston Douglas, Cameron Harpole, and Shimon Mateer, and I think that there are reasons to feel pretty confident in that group. Marcus Arroyo's offense is at times featured some pretty good tight end usage as well, but still, there's a lot of question marks because none of these guys have been able to really do it for a full season. You're kind of like on that consistent level, but the upside I think is there.
Well, that saves me some time of talking now because, spoiler alert, my number 8 is the tight end position. Similar stuff to what you just said. I mean, it's an absolute total overhaul. So this one is largely based in the fact that there's so much unknown. I mean, we just haven't seen these guys play at ASU. Mateer, I'm going to agree 100%. He's one of those guys that if we were to make a list of like breakout candidates or somebody that you don't know who he is now, but you might, in a couple months, he's someone that is really, really intriguing. I mean, those numbers are pretty solid, especially, compared to what ASU has among this position group. So that's one that, again, there's a little bit of concern, especially because it should be a strong suit of the offense in terms of just the usage of them. Now, we need to see if these guys can get the job done when called upon. I think Mateer can. Some of the others have that potential as well. Giggy, is he like going all Chance Cox on us here? Like, he's from the 928 area code.
No,
Defense, I know people that were talking back in the day about Chance Cox. They should have switched him to tight end. I think he might have in practice. Wish that dude would not have gotten injured, man. That was someone that had a lot of potential coming out of high school. Anywho, tight end, my number 8.
All right. So I guess doing a show together for 13 years, you start to get in sync. So number 8, cornerback. For me, yeah, as Joe mentioned, this is another position where a lot of new faces, a lot of the old familiar guys are gone from a season ago. I think losing Ed Woods hurt, especially during the kind of timing of it mid spring camp. It was not great. So I think right now you're just kind of hoping on some upside, and there's reason for optimism with that upside. Keith Abney, really promising true freshman season, and really kind of stepping in a leadership role. Even though he is one of the younger guys, he has that I think some Jordan Clark face of the program potential in maybe another year or two. And if he can get out there and that play can match, kind of the superlatives that we're hearing about him off the field, that could be a big time player. Javon Robinson has experience in this defense as the Washington State transfer. I thought he really finished camp on a strong note and well positioned to be a guy that could be in atop that 2 deep. LT Welch for the LSU transfer, I thought he had some struggles here and there in spring, but again, finished strong, and I think he's going to be very much in that mix. But Rodney Bimage, we talked about, you probably heard that name a lot during spring practice, a true freshman out of Texas. He's a guy that really made his name in spring practice, and I think he's well positioned to be in that 2 deep if he's able to continue that trajectory into fall camp. You have some youngsters as well, Chris Johnson, Plas Johnson as well. Tony Lewis and Kuba could be in that mix at corner as well. But really, I think you're just looking for some of those veteran guys who've played at some power programs, and Robinson, Welch, and Keith Abney. You got to have some of those guys kind of step in and establish themselves as go-to guys in the Big 12, because I think the pass rush is going to be good, so that'll help out the situation at corner. But you need to feel good about what your position or your situation at the cornerback position.
So as we close out the first half of these lists, this next entry for me would have been a few clicks higher, maybe even in like the top 3, if not for a key offseason departure. That, of course, being the wide receiver position group. This one, to me, really depends on if Jordan Tyson can be that top guy, because you've got some real solid receivers, but you don't necessarily have anyone that's proven, again, as that like top guy, maybe 1,000-yard potential, the kind of stuff that you saw out of Elijah Badger the last couple of seasons. Again, there's no shortage of talent. Aside from Tyson, you've got Troy O'Meary, Melquan Stovall, Xavier Guillory, Jake Smith, others as well. But again, the fact that ASU just doesn't have that very proven number 1 wide receiver, that's why there's a little concern, and that's why this is on, right on the outside looking in of the top half of these position confidence ratings.
My number 7 is the interior offensive line. Although right now I do feel pretty good about 2/3 of the interior. Lee Fatanu, rock solid as your center, had a pretty good season a year ago. I think is taken a step up in terms of his physical conditioning and his strength. The leadership is there. He's one of the key team leaders at this group, or this squad. It really kind of leans on right now. Ben Coleman has over 30 games of starting experience at Cal, and I thought have been a difference maker last season had he not been injured. He's now healthy. I think he's those 2 guys at left guard and center I feel really good about. I also feel that there's some potential at right guard as well. Sean Na'a, thrown into a real tough situation a season ago, but he really performed well in spring. He also got a lot of reps at center, so he might be a center of the future candidate. But I think he's got some real tantalizing pieces in there to be a quality guard. Kyle Scott, after having kind of a rough transition from junior college to the Pac-12, he had a good spring. I think he could be in that mix as well. Veteran Cade Briggs is another guy who can you can put him anywhere on that offensive line. I think he's probably best suited for the interior in some form or capacity. That's going to be good. I think that you need a guy like that, a glue guy that can help spot. But you just don't know beyond how those 3 guys will come together. And I mean, obviously going to the Big 12, it's a conference that is known for perhaps a little more physicality than the Pac-12. So we'll see how those things rack up. But I do think that they're in pretty decent shape, kind of given the wealth of experience they have in Fatanu and Coleman, I guess, and Briggs as well, and then some tantalizing newcomers that could be contributors in some way in a hopefully healthier offensive line.
So for mine coming up on number 6, I kind of bounce back and forth on which direction I wanted to go because it's tough. It's tough when you have so many new players, whether it's transfers or true freshmen or whatever the case may be, that these sort of confidence ratings is like the position could be solid. You just don't know what you have. We haven't been watching these guys for 1, 2, 3 years, and we know, hey, this guy's coming up through the ranks and he's improving and making his natural progression. So that makes this a little bit more difficult. But you know what? On number 6, I'm actually going to make an executive decision right now and make a change. So I'm actually going to put the interior offensive line for that because I was comparing to some others. Exactly what Brad just said. Fatanu has all conference potential. Ben Coleman, has done so at Cal. He's someone that should be a stalwart of this offensive line. Na'a got that crash course experience last year, so we'll see how they all come together. I think that they should still be a strong group. I think that there is, the interior offensive line, I think, is quite a bit of ways ahead of the offensive tackles, and that's something that certainly very well could play into the play calling for ASU between those strengths, perceived strengths and weaknesses, and then also of the skill players and running backs and quarterbacks. So those interior offensive linemen, I'm sure our good buddy Kyle Murphy is going to be watching those Hogs out there and, being real proud of what happens. At least that's what I hope to see here in the fall.
Number 6 is just kind of, same position as I just talked about, but other side of the ball, defensive tackle. CJ Fight on the brink of stardom. He's a guy made his mark a season ago as a youngster behind some veterans, but really, really good spring. Respected guy in that locker room despite being a true sophomore. I think he's well positioned to be kind of one of those leaders of the defense, a key contributor, a difference maker, a really disruptive presence against the run. And I'd really like a trio of additions that ASU made on the interior through the transfer portal. Jacob Kangaika coming up from U of A. Just absolutely beastly. I mean, he's usually one of those guys that you hear the stories of what he's doing in the weight room, and the play at times during the spring was there to match. Jeff Clark, kind of a different profile, more of a Deshaun Mallory, smaller, quicker defensive tackle. He could be a guy that is really disruptive in the middle on passing downs. J.P. Dieter from Purdue, I thought made great strides, and by the end was making pretty consistent trips in the offensive backfield. Tristan Monday's there, but then even after spring, ASU bolstered that group, adding Zach Swanson, formerly of Brophy in the Texas Longhorns. He's now there to bolster that group. Justin Watley, who might see more of his time at defensive end, but still is a guy that can play inside as well on passing downs. He's really a guy I thought before a spring injury was really just one of the top playmakers on the defensive side overall. So I feel really good about defensive tackle. Now, granted, as we kind of keep saying, there's a lot of these position groups that have a lot of talent, but you just haven't seen the proven experience on Saturdays, right, and the production on Saturdays. So I think the opportunity is there, and that's why I put them in the hopeful tier. But I think defensive tackle, based on what we saw in spring, and added a nice piece in Swanson, a former 4-star prospect, I believe. You got to feel pretty good about what Brian Ward and new defensive line coach Deron Reynolds are going to be able to do with these guys.
And that's the one that I was going back and forth with on the previous one. Which one's going to be 6? Which one's going to be 5? Interior D-line versus the interior O-line. And so obviously said offensive line for 6. So my interior D-line is going to be number 5. Reasons Brad just knocked out there. CJ Fight really seems like he's ready to step it up to be a key player and a leader of this team. And these transfer acquisitions, you get some really interesting things out of them. Like we've talked about before, the coaching staff did about as good of a job as it possibly could, and I emphasize the word "it," meaning just the things that ASU works with as far as acquiring new talent and the opportunities and the limitations there. So I think that they did quite a job there. But again, like we've talked about, you just have that little disclaimer on a lot of these of we haven't seen a lot of these guys play. I mean, last time anybody was watching Jacob Gangaika play, at least for a Sun Devil fan, they probably weren't cheering for him. You know what I'm saying? So again, but this is a position group that I think could surprise some people, and if they can, then that's huge because they're going to be surrounded by some very talented players on that line. So what they can do can really amplify the defense if they step it up.
I think so far this might be our biggest discrepancy in terms of like 2 spots because you had receivers at 7. I have receiver at 5. And as you mentioned, losing Elijah Badger, it's not good. It's never good losing a player of that caliber. But I do think that there's one position group on this team that could absorb a hit like that. It's probably wide receiver, because you saw at about that same point, Jordan Tyson just really level up, maybe a couple levels up over the course of spring, as he became really more, come back from that injury. He was last season. He saw some spot duty. He didn't make a catch, but now fully confident coming back from that injury he suffered when he was at Colorado. I think if he's ready for prime time, this could be a serious group, because there's a lot of very talented players that also fit a lot of very different roles. Because you have Jordan Tyson, it might be that you're a wide receiver 1, but Melquan Stovall, just the route running he showed off in spring was really a noticeable improvement. Razor sharp, didn't drop anything. He was making some big time plays. Troy O'Meara, big body dude, he has that that mismatch potential. Just he's 6'4", very fast, very quick. Unfortunately, he kind of ended spring on getting dinged up a little bit, but some serious potential there. Xavier Guillory had great camps last year, wasn't able to put it together during an injury-plagued season. He's now healthy, and I think I talked to him recently. He said his mindset is a lot better than it was a year ago. So he has some great physical tools, getting to putting that mental game along the line there. Jake Smith, we've talked about him a lot. You're betting on a world of potential. Now that he's eligible, he hasn't played a college game in 3 years, so he's chomping at the bit. Then adding Malik McClain over from Penn State, a guy who made his mark with blocking, brought music to Hines Ward's ears, and then some youngsters that I think have some potential for maybe the future. But again, maybe a fall camp, a strong fall camp, get them in the rotation. Zechariah Sample, the true freshman from Texas, I believe it's now 2 weeks in a row, or maybe 2 out of the last 3 weeks, that as they're going through the offseason workouts, they've been tweeting out like Speedster of the Week or Iron Devil of the Week, for a guy. And this is a guy in Sample who's pushing 23 miles an hour in some of their analytics in terms of some just serious speed. Caleb Black, Corbin Hendricks, also guys that are coming in with another year of experience. But I think that if you get Tyson to show the potential that he had over the last 3 weeks of spring, that chemistry with Sam Levitt, that could be a real weapon when you add the other pieces. That's going to be hard to scheme for if you're a DC.
So now we enter the final 4. You do process of elimination. It is guaranteed that we will have the same 4 among each of our final 4s. Now then, will they be in the same order? We will determine that. And I think probably I can speak for Brad on this group. When we get to this point, now we're reaching the position groups where you've got some solid confidence in. I think that you almost break it in thirds more or less. That those first few that we talked about, those are the concerns. The middle ones that we just ran through, I think, are the ones where, we just need to see how these transfers are going to add up. Or a guy like Jordan Tyson, can he make that leap to be that wide receiver 1? Because, yes, if he does, then I would agree with what Brad's saying as far as having that up a notch. I'm just being a little more conservative on that one. I think these position groups are ones, where there could be some legitimate strength of the team. For me, starting at number 4, and that's going to be linebacker. We've talked about it over and over and over again. Not only do you bring back guys that contributed a lot last year, like Tate Romney, Caleb McCullough, but you also brought in just that slew of linebackers who are highly accomplished from other schools, especially G5 schools, like what Keyshawn Elliott did at New Mexico State, Cyrus Fiaseo at San Diego State, Jordan Crook at Arkansas. Obviously not a G5 school there, but he got a lot of run there with the Hogs. So, you brought in some talent, you returned some talent, you got depth, you got competition. I mean, that's a position group, again, that we've talked about quite a bit this offseason, especially in the spring. We're curious, are they going to keep everybody around? And they did a great job at that. So that's one where they can use players to their strengths. They can rotate. They can get creative. There's a lot that you can do at linebacker. So that's a position group that really intrigues me. Yeah, so I don't know if we said, but we didn't compare lists before we did this. But, we're in lockstep. Linebacker, number 4 for me as well. Yeah, Tate Romney, I thought, had a really impressive debut season as a starter. First time really got a whole lot of playing time. Caleb McCullough, the wily vet, he's been around. Those 2 guys, I think, are really reliable with some upside of their own as well. But that trio of newcomers, as you mentioned, I think Keyshawn Elliott has a real chance to become a star, maybe an all-conference caliber guy.
He's he just really impressed, and I think he has a little certain something. Jordan Crook really quick, and then whether it seemed like Brian Ward, as he got to feel the feel for Crook a little bit better, was dialing some stuff up in spring. Whether it's bringing him off the edge to rush the passer, or it was some in against the run. Really kind of a difference maker. Cyrus Fiasse, who's a steady guy, had a nice, was good in some pass coverage situations as well. There's some young guys in Kavion Thunderbird, Crew Jackson that are around, but Martell Hughes, I mentioned him, I think during our spring wrap up, a guy who's coming in as a true freshman, was a converted safety from the San Diego area. Buy stock now. He might not necessarily crack the rotation this season. I think that he's got a bright future, but I think when you have 5 guys that you feel pretty good at for those 2 spots, and each kind of has their own their skill set, some profiles, but I think you got some star potential, but also you got some high floors as well with some of those guys. So I think that second level of the defense, and Brian Ward said that he sees that some of these guys coming back in like the Romneys and the McCulloughs and the other guys that played a year in this system, they're now starting to know the why of this defensive scheme, not just what they're supposed to do, but the why, and that's allowing them to make better plays, be more proactive, and have greater effectiveness. So I think that linebacker is an area that ASU fans, and this is for me, I can kind of on those tiers, I have peace of mind at linebacker given what we saw.
So moving up to number 3, it's kind of wild to think that a position group that lost not only its best player, but arguably the most accomplished player on the Sun Devil roster last season, who still has one more year of eligibility to play. It's wild under those circumstances that this would be one of your top 3, high confidence position groups. But that's what you get at the edge rusher positions, because what you've got with Prince Dorba, Clayton Smith, if Elijah Neal can be someone that creates an impact. We talked about him a lot this offseason. Those top 2 guys, they flashed quite a bit. They're obviously playing beside and behind B.J. Green, departed now to Colorado by way of Washington. Again, those 2 have some high potential. They came to ASU with high potential. Clayton Smith was a former 5-star recruit that transferred from Oklahoma. Prince Dorba, I believe, was a 4-star that began his career at Texas. So some high recruiting pedigree. They showed some flashes last year. And, moving into this year with those guys being the guys, I think that can be a very strong combination on the edge for ASU.
Yeah, I agree. Number 3, I'm going to say Dorba and Smith are a 15-sack combo. I really, really, really liked what I saw in spring. Clayton Smith bulked up, and anybody watching play last year, a little thin for the position, very quick. But in spring, he bulked up, added some good muscle, still very quick as well. Didn't seem to lose a step whatsoever. Prince Dorba, he had 6 sacks in the first 6 games, and then unfortunately suffered that dislocated elbow that really kind of limited him down the home stretch. So I think Smith and Dorba as starters, you got to feel pretty good at. But then I like the depth as well, because Elijah O'Neal seems to be rounded in to be a guy that can be a very valuable contributor. He got some good reps down the back half of last season. Justin Watley mentioned him earlier, ability to play inside, but I think his biggest mark is going to be made along the at the defensive end spots as well. Roman Petrie might need a year or 2 to bulk up a little bit, but had some good upside, huge wingspan there. Very kind of that modern, prototypical edge rusher guy. And then they add Jamon Tapp from Texas post-spring through the portal. Really, really like what the scheme does at defensive end. They got some guys who've proven they can do it a little bit at this level. Now, if they have a full season in a starting role, they have I think a nice upgrade at in their position group coach and Deron Reynolds, a guy who's really kind of he's putting a guy in the Hall of Fame here in a couple months, and Dwight Freeney in his career, who's worked with Aaron Donald in the Pass Rush Summit that guys really want to play for. And so I think when you have a guy that's proven to produce elite NFL caliber pass rushers, I think that's gonna translate. And we saw, I spent a lot of time watching the defensive line and Coach Reynolds in spring, and just kind of watching the technique and the teaching. And there's some Robert Rodriguez to that there in terms of just the technician aspect. And a lot of talking to a lot of players, they seem to really enjoy it. So I think that's going to unlock some serious potential along the edge.
So we're down to the final 2, and I had a little internal debate, a little back and forth with these, but I like the selections that I made. So number 2 for me is going to be running back.
Oh, okay.
We talked just ad nauseum. I mean, again, and it's a coin flip between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
There's a little caveat about number 1 that helps give it its edge. Goodness gracious, what can you say at running back? I mean, they're just stockpiled with some talent there between, Cam Scadaboo, Raleek Brown, Jason Brown coming in, Kyson Brown, DeCarlos Brooks. I mean, there's a multitude of players who can get it done. McCaskill, of course, coming in from Colorado by way of an earlier stop at Houston. That's someone that was a double-digit touchdown guy, at near 1,000-yard or maybe beyond guy. Just had some injury issues. So the only question mark about this group really is just how they're going to get everybody the ball. And if that's the worst thing to worry about a position group, then you're in pretty dang good shape. Again, I could have easily gone with this as number one, and you figure they're going to be really, really intrigued to see how they're going to be used in this offense. Because to me, if you look at it and how we broke down the other position groups, okay, we've got questions at offensive tackle. We've got questions at quarterback. We have some uncertainty, fewer questions, but just some uncertainty at wide receiver, tight end, that sort of thing. So you figure the offense, especially early, is going to run through that ground game, not only because of the talent at running back, but as we mentioned, the comparative talent in the interior offensive line. Now, obviously, the whole line works in the run game, but those interior guys are real crucial when you're talking about running the football. So, again, really curious to see how they get all the guys involved in the offense. That is, quite the good situation to be in if you're Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo, and those types that make those sort of decisions. Obviously, Sean Aguano as well. So this running back group should be something special. Again, there are a lot of names that are going to be new for everybody, so you're going to learn a lot about them. Just how last year not everybody knew who Cam Scadaboo was, and then you go through the season, and everybody's favorite player, and deservedly so. So I think some fireworks are coming from this group.
All right, so I actually differing a little bit here. Number 2 for me is safety. I think we have a chance this season to have a safety tandem on the level of Demarius Randall and Jordan Simone. Shamari Simmons, great last year, team MVP as voted on by his peers. The newly eligible Xavier Alford. I'm super excited to see Xavier Alford in action because he has some serious ability, and those two together, I think, are going to have the chance to be really special and be really, really good. But the depth there is what gets to me. I think they're really 5 deep in terms of those 2 traditional safety spots there. Ghost Rouser was wildly productive at New Mexico State, a 10-win New Mexico State team a season ago. Kamari Wilson had some tremendous recruiting pedigree and got some time playing in the SEC, and he kind of ramped up as spring went on. But Montana Warren is a guy to watch. He was going to be a key contributor to the defense a season ago before he broke his collarbone and during the Camp Tonazona scrimmage. He's healthy. His teammates rave about him. So you have some youth, you have some experience, you have some I think really, really high upside guys. And then as ASU considers nickel part of that safety group as well, I think you're in really good hands. Mason Williams, very steady veteran. Cole Martin, wealth of talent as a young player coming over from Oregon. Yeah, that situation. Keith Abney is a guy who could also contribute at nickel as well, but. I might save that for my season preview hot take. It's something that Alford and Simmons are going to be ASU's best tandem since Randall and Simone.
And that's part of the reason why, of course, process of elimination, I've got safety as my number 1. I mean, Shamari Simmons just had an incredible year. He was a team MVP last year, right? I mean, that's something special. I mean, obviously, Cam Scadaboo and Elijah Badger and others, really contributed a lot to obviously BJ Green, but what Shamari Simmons did and how respected he is by his coaches and peers, that really says something. Alford, between him and Jake Smith, just how eager they're going to be to get back on the field. I would hate to be, the ball carrier or the receiver or tight end or whatever. That's the first one to cross paths with Alford on the first hit that he's going to make in live action here in 2024. I'll put it that way. You talked about Montana Warren, Ghost Rouser, Kamari Wilson. I mean, these are all guys that have, levels of experience or very intriguing upside. A guy like Warren who could have contributed last year if not for injury, moving over to the nickel positions, as you mentioned, that's considered part of this group. Mason Williams has got a lot of experience. Cole Martin, that high-profile Arizona native who played quite a bit for obviously a very good Oregon team last year. So, I mean, you can go 2 to 3 deep across the board without really skipping a beat. So this is just going to be a lot of diamonds for this coaching staff to work with. Again, I could have gone, either way with safety or running back. It's very clear to anybody that knows this team that those are the 2 clear-cut strengths of this team. And it's they're very similar in nature where it was like, man, how do you keep all these guys here? I mean, in this day and age, how can you have 4 to 5 starting caliber safeties and keep them all happy, keep them all involved and engaged and on the roster. And obviously ASU certainly did that. So really intrigued by what we're going to see out of these position groups, whether it's safeties and nickelbacks heading into this season.
Yeah, I think, with safety and running back, those are in like their own tier of sleeping tight in terms of confidence, because you know you're going to get good things. And watching Cam Scadaboo, like a newly kind of slimmed down in spring from what he was a year ago, people around the program, they mentioned that his mental approach is better than a season ago, and so hopefully he's not after being asked to do 100 different things and play quarterback and punt again. He can just focus on being a bruising, game-breaking ball carrier. But then Raleek Brown has that explosive speed, but also showed some good power up the middle during spring practice and run on that tough ASU defense. Kyson Brown showed that he has the makings of an all-purpose back. DeCarlos Brooks is if he's healthy, he's able to just be a bruising back, and he even contributed at fullback as a lead blocker and short yardage guy a season ago. Jason Brown, the 4-star true freshman, is exciting potential. Then, as you mentioned, Alton McCaskill, I believe, had 18 touchdowns or something with Houston in the AAC freshman of the year in 2021. Things got hurt, but unfortunately didn't really get the chance to contribute to Colorado a season ago. But he's down here. It seems like he's healthy and making his mark as well. It's just pick your poison in terms of what a defense is going to do, and that's a great problem to have for Aguano, Dillingham, and Arroyo to have a backfield this deep. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. Every year it seems like Sean Aguano's talking about he likes to spread the ball around than usually the last few years. It's been one guy kind of carrying the load, but we'll see how things happen, and hopefully they have a healthier, better offensive line performance than a season ago. But the weapons are certainly there. So I think it's a pretty good. And as you mentioned, Joe, I think between safety and running back, it's just like it's a really good situation in both those groups. All right, so as we those are our rankings. I mean, should we run them down again just for the folks that maybe for in summary, even though they're pretty close, I should say. I mean, because like I had running back 1, number 2 safety, defensive end, then linebacker, receiver, tackle, or defensive tackle, interior offensive line, corner, tight end, then running out at the bottom list with offensive tackle, quarterback, and special teams.
So I just deleted my notes. So I'm going to try to go off of memory
there you
here.
go.
Okay, so 1 was safety, right? 2 was running back.
Yeah.
3 was edge. 4 was linebacker. I think 5 was interior defensive line, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't write yours down, but yeah, sounds good.
All right, yeah, we'll play a little.
You had receiver at 7 because I had to. That was our biggest.
All right,
biggest variant.
And then 6 was interior offensive line. This is a test for all of y'all listening. Like you got to tell me if I'm right. Were you paying attention? All right, so we're at 7. We got the wide receiver. Okay, let's go the other direction because I know that 12 was offensive tackle.
Yeah.
11 was quarterback. 10 was special teams. So then we need to get 9 and 8.
We had them flipped.
So this would be, what am I even missing here? I know that cornerback is one of them.
There you go.
Is that 9?
That was 9.
And then was it tight end at 8?
Tight end.
Okay. That was really easy.
There you go.
Was not easy. Okay.
All right. So before we close out, had a chance to catch up with a new ASU committee. You heard us talking about him on the off the top. Guy with a really impressive frame and some good upside. Uriah Neloms joined the show, and he talked about why he chose ASU and his whirlwind week that ended with a commitment. All right. So it's quite the whirlwind week for you. I believe you can go from 7-on-7 to an unofficial visit to just a commit in a span of a few days. What was that kind of that stretch like for you?
I mean, I enjoyed the process. I mean, I did my work at Sevens, and they saw something that they liked. So I appreciate them for seeing that and reaching out to me. And I mean, the visit, it was amazing. It was cool to be around the facilities and have Coach Dillingham walk me through campus and stuff.
When you about that visit, when you get to see the things up close and personal, get kind of behind the scenes look and everything, meeting these people face to face, what things made the deepest impression on you and ultimately kind of were the biggest factors in your decision?
I feel like the biggest like factor of it was the way Coach Dillingham and the other coaches that I met, Coach Ward, how they made an impact on my life right when I got there. They like Coach Dillingham. He was like he brought me in kind of and like he was trying to make a relationship more than just football. If that makes sense. And then with Coach Ward, he was just like I was there for like a short amount of time, but I learned so much from him just from that short time.
And I believe you're friends with the current Sun Devil, Ramar Williams. What was some of the feedback, in that decision-making process? Obviously, he's gone through a little bit here, with the program. What kind of feedback did you get from him?
I mean, he just told me it was a great place to be in. Like, he was just telling me how it's a family over there, and if that's what I'm looking for, then right here it is. Like, here's the place for you.
Talking and getting to know Kenny Dillingham, one of the youngest head coaches in major college football. You mentioned kind of the family atmosphere. What kind of jumped out to you as a head of a program, as a leader from Coach Dillingham?
His presence was big with me. He didn't like go into a shell. He like expressed himself and was like free, like to be him. If that makes sense.
As a local guy, what does it mean to be kind of a Valley guy playing for the local university?
I mean, it means a lot. I mean, I have a fan base right here. I got my coaches, everyone that's seen me grow up. They can come watch me and support me. It means a lot.
That's a guy who's playing at a smaller level high school. What do you hope that this commitment to a Power Four program says to other guys that might be playing at below the the 6-5A level and type of stuff like that?
If you can play football, you'll get found. Like it doesn't. I mean, do they matter? I mean, of course, it's high level competition, but you can get same opportunities just doing it your way. Always bet on yourself.
Was playing college football always a lifelong dream of yours?
Yes, sir. My lifelong dream is to go play in the league. So this is the next step to achieving that goal.
I believe your father, you played college football as well. What kind of impact did he have on your journey and now helping you get to this next major step on the way to your lifelong goal?
I mean, it was everything for real. He was kind of like my rock through the whole process because he's done it before. And just like growing up and like being able to learn from him, like whenever I felt I wasn't good enough or like I'm not like trying to do this today, he would always be the first one to be like, "This is what you said you wanted. Go be Uriah," you know.
So you obviously put up some massive receiving statistics last season. Well over 1,000 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, but also playing other positions as well. I believe quarterback, linebacker, DB at various times. How has playing those other positions maybe helped elevate your game, or could have a future impact on your success at wide receiver?
I mean, being able to play DB, you get to learn like how they think and how their technique is, and you could use that to, of course, your advantage as a receiver. And then you can see the game from like different perspectives, and you have different like rules. If that makes sense.
Any ASU fans out there who might not have caught you in action or seen your film, give our viewers and listeners a scouting report. What kind of skill set do you bring to the field as a receiver?
I'm a big body receiver, and I like to catch the football.
We're getting to know Coach Ward. What kind of stands out about him? Obviously, the NFL resume and what he's been able to do kind of speaks for itself. But when you got to know him from a coaching perspective, as your future position guy, what kind of jumps out to him most?
I feel like his personality, it was big with me. He like you would never be able to tell like if you didn't know who he was. He doesn't give off like I'm Heinz Ward. You know what I'm saying? You kind of just like when I met him, I didn't like know who he was at first because like it was so like he was so nonchalant about who he was, and I feel like that's big.
Of course, he obviously was known as not in addition to being a guy who put up 1,000 catches in the NFL, but As the league's best blocking wide receiver, and during spring practices, he'd like to tell the guys, you got to block to get the rock. How does that kind of gel with you? Are you somebody who likes to do that dirty work that doesn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet?
I've grown towards it. I'm not gonna lie. When I was younger, like coming up, I wasn't about it. But once you realize that it's a team game and you got to do your part, even on the run plays, even when your quarterback's out in space, I enjoy blocking.
Kenny Dillingham's obviously made his mark as an offensive mastermind. New offensive coordinator Marcus Rose had great success over his career. When you've gotten to know the Arizona State offensive scheme that you'll be playing in next year, what kind of jumps out to you about what the scheme and how they like to use the wide receivers?
They like to get the ball to their guys in space and let their athletes make plays. And I feel like that's something I could thrive with.
Of course, you'll be playing in the Big 12. What are your thoughts on playing in the Big 12 conference and teams across the Texas, the Midwest, and everything?
I mean, I'm excited because in the Pac where they were Pac-10, right? So Pac-12, they've like played in the same environment. Like everything's the same out here on the West Coast. So being able to go in like the Midwest and be in the Big 12, I feel like it's gonna be a great experience.
And then one last season at the high school level. What are your goals for this season, this fall? And what are the things you want to do during the course of that season that you think will help prepare you for that jump up to major college football next year?
Well, right now, as like being who I am for my team, just becoming a better leader and just like leaving my mark on the 2A level, show that I was like the best player to do it at the 2A level, and then just keep progressing as a receiver, keep getting in with my coaches, and just keep working day in and day out.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, Uriah Neloms, ASU's newest 2025 commitment. Now, this is still going to be a kind of the slower time of the offseason. We will still be bringing you content. But, Joe, something really, really cool. I mean, 100 miles beyond anything that we brewed up before is on the horizon.
I like the clever humor. As a matter of fact, so what y'all need to do, it's save the date time. It's STD time for everybody listening here. Got to pause on that one. First and foremost, August the 3rd, which is a Saturday, Brad and I will be at everyone's favorite Sun Devil apparel store, of course, being Cactus Sports, 514 South Mill Avenue. There are details yet to be determined on some of the things with that, but just save that date, August the 3rd. It's a Saturday. Get on down to Cactus Sports. Brad and I are going to set up shop there for a little bit. If any of you, if you remember us talking about, or if you happen to attend the event we did at the Burrito Express grand opening earlier this year, it's going to be like that. We're going to hang out for a little bit. We're going to have some guests. We're going to talk with them, chopping it up with anybody that stops by and checks out the place. We just want to welcome in the new school year, the new football season, all these good things coming about, in August and September. We're going to kick that off with a little appearance at Cactus Sports. So be sure to just stay tuned for more details. But first, save that date of August the 3rd. Now then, date number 2. We're working for it here. I tell you what, August the 17th, 100 Mile Brewing Company. It's out there in Tempe, kind of near Rural Road and the 202. Hopefully you've been there. It's Sun Devil owned and operated. Real diehard Devils run the place, support the place. It's a great bar, awesome food and drinks. And what else they're going to have on August the 17th is Brad and me. We're going to be doing our second ever on location live show. And for those of you who attended our show last year, we will have the first thing that we did when we did a little walkthrough of 100 Mile Brewing Company is we tested out the speakers, we tested out the sound, and everything is an A+. Little inside joke for everybody who attended our show at the Graduate last year. But yes, we will be there. But you know what? As much as we like to, take the glory, take the attention, there's going to be a headliner that's going to be a much bigger deal than Brad and me. We've already got him locked in. It's happening. The man himself, Athletic Director Graham Rossini is committed to be there to talk with Brad and me, to do a Q&A with all of you. We're going to do giveaways. We're going to do prizes. Similar deal. We're going to treat you well. We want to make it a party, have a great time. We're working on other guests, and that guest list, I tell you what, no matter what it is going to be spectacular. But we do have Graham Rossini locked in to join us. We're going to be figuring out the exact time of the event, so that is something that's still in progress, but it is locked in for the date, Saturday, August 17th, 100 Mile Brewing Company in Tempe. Keep along with us, obviously, on social media and the podcast, the TV show, everything that we do. We're going to give you more information as it becomes available, but set that date aside. You do not want to, you cannot, if you're a Sun Devil fan, miss this event.
Great friends, great beer, a chance to chop it up with the athletic director himself. I mean, you can't ask for anything more. And as Joe mentioned, more details to come. Follow us on social media, on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and give me a follow at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. Huge shout out and thank you to our wonderful sponsors, as always. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you got to contact Jones Auto Group. If you're a Sun Devil, that's the place to go. There's no other provider of vehicles that does it better than Jones Auto Group. You know they're deep in the NIL game. They support Sun Devil student athletes like no other when it comes to that side of things. So I believe they deserve your support because our guy, Parker Jones, who runs the place, hit him up, 602-881-8998. He wants to hear from you. He's willing to help you out, do whatever he can to get you in the ride of your dreams. Thank you, of course, to DevilsDigest.com, our great friend Hode Rubino, who, I mean, gosh, she's already got the trophy. I don't know what the Rolex or the shrine to Hode that will be in this studio at some point. But, of course, become a subscriber in the huddle on DevilsDigest.com. Even though it's a relatively slow time of year, that's not going to last long. You got to be in the know.
Check out the new redesigned Rivals Network.
It looks different, too. So that's a cool thing to check out.
Functionality.
There you go. Cactus Sports, we talked about it. We're going to be there August the 3rd, live show action there at the Cactus Sports Store. But you don't have to wait until then. You shouldn't wait until then. Don't wait until then. Go to cactussports.com or their store location at 514 South Mill Avenue and do a little shopping. Our food sponsors, wonderful friends, Burrito Express and Spaghetti Shack. You already know how supportive of the Sun Devil community they are. They all have multiple locations in Tempe and around the area, around the valley. So, support them in any way that you possibly can. And then last but not least, Sun Devil Family Charities. Failed to mention, I take blame for that, the event that we're going to be doing at 100 Mile Brewing Company on August the 17th. There will be proceeds that will support Sun Devil Family Charities. That was the same case with the live show we did at the Graduate Hotel last year. So the time that we're going to spend and the fun we're going to have and the money that's going to be spent at that event, a lot of it will be going to a very, very good cause, of course, supporting our great friends at Sun Devil Family Charities.
And also be sure to support our great friends at homefieldapparel.com. Their amazing 26-piece ASU collection is pretty immaculate. The bomber jacket is something, if you don't have it in your closet already, you got to get it. And you got to get it for 15% off your first purchase at homefieldapparel.com with offer code SOTD23. And any lumberjacks out there, they're soon to release their first ever NAU collection. So a lot of cool stuff, but also over 180 schools at this point. So really just whether it's for yourself or the alum of just about anywhere in the country, they've got some great vintage collegiate apparel for you. Super comfortable shirts, jackets, hats, you name it. Home Field Apparel's got it. And also just get it for 15% off. It's great. SOTD 23 at checkout. Also, make sure you drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe, we are closing in on 200 reviews on Apple Podcasts, so we need to get over that hump. So just 10 more friends to drop us 5 stars. Are you one of those 10?
It's possible that if you leave a 5-star review, it's possible Ace you could go undefeated this year.
That's true.
It's possible statistically that if you don't, that they'll lose every game. Do you want to risk it? I don't think you should. Tell your friends not to risk it either.
So make sure you drop us those 5-star reviews. That'd be great. Join us August 3rd. Join us August 17th. And join us on our next episode. At some point, we'll be talking all things ASU football, probably.